great information, lots to talk about, and we'll try to be done by 9:30. Um, but lots going on with the school system. Cautiously optimistic about next week. It sounds like things about your school board meeting, vaccines coming, and a new hire as well. So good to see everybody this morning. Ray, side note, keep John Rose on track today. Okay, let him get carried away up there. But with that, good morning, Dr. Wright.
Good morning. And you said till 9:30, so it's one of those things, Mark, after you know me. So if I get this, that means cut it off, right?
Okay. I'll do this at 9:28. How's that?
Okay, because I could go on and on. So
no, that'd be fine.
So where do you want me to start? Because I mean, there's a lot, one way or the other. I don't know what would be the greater interest, so I'll take a prompt from you.
Well, I'll tell you, something that impacts all of us, whether we have kids in the school system or not, is the process to develop a plan. I know that the plan can change, 3 or 4 times a day, but as it is right now, what does it look like and this is an impact on businesses who have to make adjustments or want to make adjustments for their team members and things like that. On what it looks like. And I know you're going to make a decision pretty soon on remote, hybrid, in-class age groups for next week. And that'd be a great place to start.
Okay, excellent. I think everyone knows that we went into remote the week before we left for Christmas break. And simply because we were seeing not only an elevation as far as active cases among staff, which again, staffing has been our issue as far as having adults in the classroom in front of kids. And, we always get back to, well, that's why you have substitutes. Well, when your sub pool also gets exhausted due to either exposure or being ill, I mean, you finally hit your limitation as far as what's the benefit versus the risk. And so we had moved into remote with looking at midway between break, what is it that we were already seeing and able to adequately forecast. And as I was talking to Ray Render before we started, we have someone that not only that he lives and breathes and he's checking and he does this thing as far as looking back, looking forward, looking trends. He's been plotting this from the very beginning as far as going back to last spring. And some would say that does he have a crystal ball? What is it? But looking at the science side of it, and I know some people want to debate, the science. But when you look at just a statistical analysis as far as the trends, we have been told, and it's coming true, that almost 2 weeks after an event, which might be a gathering or a holiday, whatever it might be, you can watch that trend. And so we have seen that surge pick up and impact the school district, whether it's at the family unit, whether it's with the staffing, whatever it might be. So moving into where we were seeing during the break, it was already predictable. We were already seeing the 2 weeks from Christmas holidays, but we knew that coming in after New Year's Eve, that we would see it again. And it occurred because we've been tracking, even though our kids have been on remote for the last 2 weeks, not only with staff, but also looking at some of our youngsters. I know that, Mark, with that, there's been the debate, well, kids don't get as sick as. Well, that's how we started as far as the conversation, particularly over the summer. But we're finding that, yes, children do get sick. They might be asymptomatic, but we're starting to see, I don't know whether it's just an evolution of the virus or what, but we're seeing illness among our students that is alarming. With all that to say, today is our evaluation day. We made sure that was noted at the beginning of going into the remote, that we would look at today being a benchmark day. Chuck Whitlock will be gathering that information for us to look at it this afternoon and tomorrow to see what we can, what our trend is, to look at our staffing. And as we keep a big spreadsheet that even while we are on remote or even on holiday, as far as what does our staffing looks like, what is it that's being called in as far as active cases or quarantine. Also, our parents have kept us posted over this time period as well. And so what we are hoping for and being able to, because our protocols being is the Thursday before the week coming up to give enough notification to parents. And what we are hoping that when we look at this, that we return to school on the 19th, Monday, the 18th is a holiday, just as a reminder, while we're not starting on Monday. But we are hoping that we go back to K-5 full-time, 6-12 hybrid. Again, that's because of social distancing and just the sheer numbers that we have in our middle and high schools. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we need. I mean, I can't stress that enough. We do well on remote, but it's a hardship on many. And it's also a hardship on our teachers because it's very, very difficult. So what I want to stress, Mark, is that our goal and what we are hoping for is that we can make the announcement tomorrow that we are ready to roll back in and the mask requirement stays in place. And if anything, parents that did, particularly K-5, when we rolled that in last month, the debate that their children couldn't wear it, wouldn't wear it, it's for the safety of our staff. And those that did not want to were given the option, just K-5, that to enroll even past the deadline into the virtual program. And they did so. So we're hoping that we're ready to roll on Tuesday and get this semester with no more interruptions completed. So that was a long piece, but I want you to know how we make the cake to understand where we get to where we are with a finished product.
Well, I am fortunate enough to see Chuck's report, and I have to give him props. It speaks in terms that non-medical people can understand it, and that has become our North Star. By 4:35, 5:30 on Thursday afternoon, I've already sort of got a plan, and it's been
Pretty informative, isn't it?
He's a incredible way with words, and not overly optimistic and realistic when it's not going so well. But hats off to him. Along with the students, I know there's a lot of pushback with sports and stuff, but I appreciated your update this morning on athletics at this time. I think Coleman asked you that question. And can you share with us the rationale behind that and what maybe the rest of at least the basketball season looks like?
Sure will. And this becomes something that if we can't make, school work, why are you taking sports away? I mean, and that's some of the commentary that I get. And again, everyone needs to understand that there's something much bigger than, Wilson County Schools that's driving many of the decisions. And particularly, you've got the Executive Order 70, Executive Order 71, as far as that the governor more or less established the protocols, and thankful so, because we would have such lack of coordinated effort across the state if we didn't have direction. With that conversation with TSSAA, which dictates and more or less is the oversight body for high school athletics and for middle school for those that belong. And our middle schools are part of that organization. So when it came down to the complaints and what people were seeing, and they had reason to have concerns, is that the spectators that were coming into any event were not practicing social distancing. They would come in with a mask, the mask would come off. It was putting administrators anywhere in the state in a very untenable situation, saying, put your mask back on, and people more or less saying, and you're going to make me. They're not the police, and it was not a matter of even getting them removed. So what literally they did a reduction down to 25% as far as capacity prior to the executive orders, and it still wasn't. You were seeing people grouped together, and particularly in very competitive, particularly basketball, which is the season we're in right now. And so what it came down to, Mark, and you heard me say this morning, the parents of the players, school officials, game officials, school administrators, emergency personnel, which we have to have access to, that's it. It's a very Spartan arena when you're watching these sports right now. That cheerleading, dance team, pep bands, whatever, were eliminated, which caused a lot of tension for schools because, again, parents are very proud of their students that are participant in that, and rightly so. But that was something that was dictated. We see these orders are in place until I think it's, I might be speaking, I think it's February the 27th. But regardless, we're trying to adhere to that. We're trying to keep people healthy so we can continue playing because it's important. Someone said, well, you're not dictating that with bowling. For those of you that don't know, TSSAA also oversees bowling, but that's an individual sport that, you can protect. And right now, Lebanon High School is leading the pack. They beat Dixon County last night, made sure they know that. But so, Mark, right now, the limitations being is trying to keep everyone safe. I know we even debate, we've got some champion wrestling teams in Wilson County schools. And, that's a unique sport in itself as far as, again, how do you maintain that safety? And we're doing the best we can with guidance from TSSAA. And I don't want to say I apologize, but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that we are in this kind of situation because this is a time for not only our students, but their parents to watch them participate. And the dynamics are so different. And Mark, you know better than anyone that when you get a crowd inside a gym, you'll see the best come out in kids because there's just something about that energy that changes the dynamics. And it sounds like an echo chamber right now.
I refereed basketball for 31 years, I think, off and on, and the best in students and sometimes the worst in others. But
oh yeah, and I coach basketball, so I get you.
we miss it. But if you would move on to the I guess the good news, if you will, on vaccines, the level raised up and the impact that it'll have. I think people will be surprised to find out not only the number of employees in the school system, but to me, what looks like a very, very high percentage that want to get the vaccine.
Yes, particularly when people were telling me that they just wouldn't do it. The thing, and just sort of give a sort of a scope, so much is dependent as far as educators right now, all across the country. And so the national conversation being that what can we do to expedite that educators have access to the vaccine, whether to contribute to the herd immunity, we won't debate that. But the thing is keeping them well so they can be in that classroom. And so they were down the line, and particularly in Tennessee, we saw that we were phase 2, got bumped to 1B. Well, there was also the distribution of those ahead of educators, emergency personnel, 75 plus, that kind of thing, that when people kept saying, well, when are they going to have access? This isn't going to help us at all. We still have to get through the spring, and we don't have control of that. However, out of the mayor's office, the Department of Health, as well as the local hospital, can you get us the numbers for each school site and for any employee that touches, when I say that touch, students, and that could be transportation, food services, maintenance, our substitute pool, and then our classroom teachers, support personnel. We have right at about 2,600 employees in Wilson County schools in some capacity. That always surprises people that they don't understand. We're the 9th largest school district out of 145 school districts in the state, folks. So put that in context. I mean, it equals out. And
by far makes you the largest employer in Wilson County.
Yes. Except I'm not going to debate Amazon when it's seasonal. We can't surpass Amazon, but as an employer, we are the largest. So when we put out the call, as far as those that are willing and ready to be vaccinated, I need name and number. And I won't tell you what I was predicting because, there's still that skepticism as far as I'm not going to get that vaccine until so. I'm going to be the first in line. I'll tell you folks, first in line. And out of 2,600, around 2,600, we had over 1,400 across the board that please include us in the vaccine. And so as soon as that starts, I have to caution parents though. I've already had one text message this morning. Does that mean we can get back to real school? No, not yet. We've got to get to that point, but this is a huge first step, Mark. And I know that's not something you would get excited about. As one person said, I'm not excited about getting poked in the arm. However, well, this is one time that, it's for the greater good. And we can address this problem.
Good news in your latest hire.
Oh, yes,
Sounds
yes.
like you had a really good one with experience with Wilson County schools. Maybe 2021 has started off with a blessing for you in that department.
Well, and, you did listen this morning. With the retirement of Mickey Hall after 28 years, that's shepherded this school district through a lot of events and overtime, and took on far more responsibility than you would find with a chief finance officer anywhere. Operations, buildings, oversight of facilities. I could go on and on. A huge hole. And it's not often that you find people that are versed in school finance. It's a different entity. It's a governmental entity, but there's still so many programs and flow through dollars that you have to work through. So after the interview process, we have offered, and it's been accepted, the position to Michael Smith. He is a certified CPA. So that's sort of redundant. He is a CPA. He also has credential with the Tennessee Office of Accounting. He's had private sector accounting, but worked 6-7 years as a legislative auditor that would be the lead auditor for multiple local governments in Middle Tennessee, including Wilson County Schools. He was our auditor that would come and camp out for a month and go through books, and also for Wilson County government. So he's had that position with both, a great relationship. And that's hard to say that you can have a good relationship with an auditor because their function and role is not to be your friend, but to make sure that things are done appropriately. He's had a good relationship with Aaron Maynard, who is the chief finance officer for the county. And then also as far as his work here, and I will say that very, very thorough, and I don't want sort of a no nonsense. After that, he spent 2 years by request of the Tennessee Comptroller's Office as an lead investigator for fraud, waste, and abuse of public funds. Traveled the state, that was his role, and even to the point that in some instances, prosecution and having to testify in court why whatever the occurrence. And presently he's finishing up. He's the finance director for Murfreesboro City Schools and will be joining us on January the 25th. And so I say all that so you can see not only the wealth of experience, but also being very versed as far as operations of a school district, but also county government. I think it'll serve us well. I know it'll serve us well, but it's also one of those things that, when I look at it, as I remind people on that return of investment, out of all the school districts, 145, you're getting a good return on your investment. We're in the bottom as far as looking at per pupil allocation, which is dependent on your general operating budget. I think Bedford County might be one below us. And I say that not as a complaint, but just saying that when you look at our outcomes and performance and no audit findings for 7 years, which is excellent for any school district. I'm proud of this district. I'm proud of what's been accomplished, and we're good stewards of the taxpayers' dollar.
Well, with a guy like that and a background like that, going in, being an auditor, investigator, whatever, I would imagine there are school systems all over the state of Tennessee that are so excited to have that guy off of their tail that he'll be spending his time in Wilson County. So,
well, I would jokingly say, particularly as far as that lead investigator, because I'm sure that when he came in with his team, it's like, oh, and how long will you be here?
Being in the restaurant business and have an employee come back and say, hey, Mark, there's somebody from the Board of Health at the front counter. Do you have a minute? It's like, oh man, there goes today. So
yeah.
You mentioned Mickey being here, would you say 28 years or something like that? I knew
28
him.
years from 92. And he navigated, particularly in those early years, there was a period of time that our teachers had to go and get a note at Wilson Bank and Trust to guarantee that if the county couldn't pay their salaries, they would be obligated to pay that note back to Wilson Bank. And so that was his first opportunity to join Wilson County Schools. And I mean, and that's one, when you look at the law books, that was a case study in Wilson County. I taught it years ago, as far as that, the accountability and responsibility as far as any county for public education. So
I knew Mickey personally before he worked at the school system, when he worked with Ron Gilbert with the comptroller's office as an auditor. So I wonder, looking back, I bet he's been through, I can probably think of at least 5 now, maybe even 6 school directors over the course of his career. So we
I
certainly
think 8. I think 8. And then he had to put up with me.
8. Well, that's so a total of 13, it seems like then, right? Yeah. Now I know you'll miss him. We will too.
Yeah,
he will be
absolutely.
Just a wealth of historical knowledge about the schools, but wish him well. Just like in your business, ours, this is often the time of year. And I thought it was interesting this morning that you referenced what all of us experienced last year as we prepared our budgets. If you had a budget prepared for 2020 by the end of January or the 1st of February, that was pretty much useless by about March the 4th or 5th. And some of the things that the school system, along with every branch of government, not having an idea, some of us were told sales tax will plummet to 0, massive layoffs, construction projects halted in their tracks. None of that really turned out to be the case yet, but thank goodness. But there's some reworking and some catching up to do in this year's budget process. And I was kind of amazed at the challenges that the school system in Wilson County are going to face.
Well, and I prompted the board, because we have 3 new board members, and I always preface this that no one can forecast. No one, your budget really is based on the best estimates of what you need operationally, and it's one that you could put a whole lot of what you would like to have, but you've got to look at what you need when you build that budget to operate. And last year, if you'll remember, the tornado hit March the 3rd. A week later, we were in the throes of a pandemic. When you look at the catastrophic events across Wilson County, that was one that you really hunker down as far as, because you don't know what your revenues, as you just said, Mark, are going to be, and particularly moving forward. And we were no exception, because at the end of the budget and going into the budget process last late spring, and knowing that we had to have it balanced by June, we were already looking at a negative as far as a $10 million deficit. And it was simply as far as increased costs, things that that you're going to need. And so what do you do to reduce that so you can get to where you balance on a status quo budget? And it was it wasn't just us, everyone was having to do that, because we didn't know what the future was going to look like. And so when we finally balanced, it was balanced on the back of that we delayed a transfer of $3.5 million into our employee health fund with the promise and the footnote that it would have to be addressed in the next year's budget. We delayed and deferred the English language arts textbook adoption, which those are on 6-year cycles. Like next year will be mathematics and the following year science. It was 1.2 million at that time. And I know some of you that are parents, there was concerns about, what about the trade books in the early grades? Well, it was one of those things, we didn't have the resources. The next thing that occurred that we had to look at, because we opened a new high school with no increased funding, and we were on a block schedule, which a block schedule is a semester as far as looking at deeper time, an hour and a half per course. allocated, but it runs on a semester to semester. Well, you need extra personnel. You just do, because teachers are teaching fewer classes, but the demand for students, they're taking more classes. If you can look at the dynamics, we had already anticipated that we were going to need 40 additional teachers because of opening the new high school, but also looking at the distribution across the other 4. And that was a cost of about $2.5 million. And then after our budget was adopted in June, after the state legislators went back into session, and again, they were having to go through the same process, not knowing what they were going to be faced. And we took a hit on the state BEP of $1.6 million that we would have to make sure that was addressed in the coming budget. So when you looked at that, and as I brought it to the board Monday night, before you start looking at about what you want to add to the budget, we've got to make sure it's understood that we're entering this new budget cycle at $8.6 million in deficit in a sort of a bracket term, because you've got to look at what you're going to do to replace those funds as you build this coming budget. We've got to put that $3.5 million back into the employee health. And no harm to employees. I don't want anyone going, oh my gosh, we didn't know that. And it was just a delay or deferred. Funding did not impact their health insurance. We have to pick up the English language arts textbooks. Much of what we're doing is digital right now, but there's still some that, particularly with our younger students, they need books in hand. The other thing, as far as we have to make sure that we neutralize the 1.6 cut with BEP, and hoping that when the legislators go into session on the 19th, that there's a hold harmless point as far as on that BEP funding, because many of the districts across the state have seen a dramatic loss of enrollment, and we're dependent on that. We have not been hurt as hard as some of our surrounding districts. Nevertheless, our parents have already said, as soon as everything gets back in order, they're coming back. So we've got to anticipate that. So you're looking at, we've got to build that. And then, there was the debate Monday night, but we want block scheduling back. Okay. We can schedule, and that's all. Block scheduling is just, it's how we adjust our day and how we offer and deliver courses. And so there can be debate on that, but the $2.5 million adjustment there, we have to do what we must do before we can get to a scheduling model, because we can schedule on a 7-period day. And if we find the $2.5 million, we can roll an extra class with every student, an elective class, and there's your block right there. So the adjustment, it was sort of like, okay, deep breath, everyone. You have to meet your budget that needs first before you put what you would like to have on top of that. So all that to say, and then I think you heard me say, Mark, this morning, there was money, the second round of stimulus dollars, as far as that's tied to sort of the CARE Act, but I call it the COVID funds. And this second round was for K through 12 education, primarily. Tennessee was awarded a little over $1 billion, substantial amount. It was dictated as far as how districts receive that, what I call on ability to pay, but also you're free and reduced, or you're economically deprived as far as student population. And our poverty level keeps decreasing every year, which masks some other things. But we received $5.6 million, which we didn't anticipate, but it's good. It's very specifically prescribed. It can be used for learning loss, acceleration of learning. It can be used for facilities. And first thing was like, no, it's prescribed. And they're really doing a push for air purification systems and dynamics like that. And then technology. But it also, the COVID impact on school districts, for example, what we didn't anticipate in our budget, just COVID absences for our staff, and then having to backload with substitutes. We're approaching a little over $7 million, or $700,000, not 7 million, $700,000, and we didn't anticipate that in our budget. So there's going to be some backfill there. I say all that because some of the surrounding districts, I've already had some calls because I've read something in the paper about, well, why did we only get 5.6 and Metro's getting a little over 100 million, or Knox County got 50 million and Clarksville got 26 million. And again, it's portrays as far as our Title I schools and what we see as poverty. Williamson County only received 1.2 million. So the W's at the end of the alphabet of school districts, our ability to pay impacts what we receive in assistance. So, but I'm not complaining. We didn't anticipate it, and it will be well used. So,
real quick, does it take more staff, teacher staff, support staff with a block schedule or a traditional schedule?
it takes more of the block. And let me put it on the thing. I am a block proponent. I was one of 4 people in 1992 that we went to Colorado and brought it back to Tennessee because the state was requiring more courses to required to graduate. And so it was killing the elective selection. And electives are anything that's above your core requirements to graduate. It could be more math, more science, but it could be your fine arts too, band, art, choral music, foreign languages, all that. So with a block schedule, it takes more teachers simply because of this, Mark. And you've got a period of time in a day, and you've got to divide and make sure you get your core requirements. The state requires 22 credits to graduate. When you go to a block, students have the opportunity to take 8 classes in 1 year, do the math over 4 years. They can accumulate 32 credits. But to do that, you've got 4 classes in the fall, 4 classes in the spring. So it immediately reduces the number of sections that a teacher is going to teach. A teacher is going to, let's say on a block schedule, there's 4 options. They're going to teach 3 and then get a 90-minute planning period for their 4. A student is going to carry 4 classes and just for a semester at a time because it condenses into a year-long class. On a 7-period day, students are going to carry 7 classes, but a teacher is going to teach 6. Now look what happens to your sections right there. So I don't need another teacher to match the teacher, if that makes sense. And it's going to go year long. There's advantages. I mean, we still have, people that are upset that if my child took math in the fall, they might not see another math course until the following fall because it's not scheduled that spring. So there's a lot of, debate back and forth, but the thing, it opens up more opportunities. You can go into subjects in greater depth, but a 7-period day goes all year long. So that you still, mix and match. And the 7-period day, it's budget neutral. We have the staff already.
Yesterday, I was on a call with some of the legislators and a legislator out of, I think, Rossville, Leader Gant, one of the leaders in the House. He touched on the 5 topics or 5 issues that the special session is going to cover with education. And not to put words in his mouth, but he seemed to think that there was widespread support in the legislature. It wasn't county specific because all 95 counties felt it to some degree. Number one, they know there's a drop off in students and that's tied to BEP money. But those students are still out there. You may not know where they're at. They may be from home, but as soon as somebody waves the green flag, they could all be dumped right back into the schools. So I think that there's, and they have one-time money that's in excess of $1.6 billion or something. So I think that they'll help you with that. He was pretty adamant that there would be hold harmless on teacher
Evaluations,
if you will. And
yes.
Yeah, thank goodness. And he seemed very committed to that as well. So
That's good to hear.
Yeah, there were, I don't know, 90 different chamber people and whatever on the call. And
did he touch on the accountability model? Because that's, again, we wrote a resolution on the BEP hold harmless, but also on accountability. And just for those that are listening, it's not that we're opposed to assessments. I mean, this district, assessments more or less are what's driving and dictating our performance because we use it for diagnostic purposes. If a child's lacking a skill set or there's a learning loss here, we know how to address it because we can determine. But the accountability measures that are in place are highly punitive. And this year being so unusual and even going into next year, you know, provide the assessments, but take the accountability measures as far as do not, you know, penalize a school.
Well, because it affected all 95, I can't even imagine a single legislate. Well, I could imagine a couple, but I don't think you're going to have to worry about that. I know that's something that the chambers are very supportive of as well.
Oh, that's good to hear. And I'll be following it very closely too.
And I would like to end on a really what I would consider a bright note, feather in the cap. I had the opportunity to meet with you and the class of Leadership Wilson last Wednesday morning, at Green Hill High School. Principal Dawson, it's probably an unfair example to talk about, compare somebody early in their career with somebody that was in the final days of their career, because I don't think anybody could ever keep up with Mel Brown if you ever did a school tour with Mel. But if there's somebody that's going to be able to do it one of these days, it's that young man that you've got running Green Hill High School. That campus is incredible. And I want to say 2 years ago, August, on a hot day out there with all those shovels, and it was so dry and dusty. And what happened over the next 2 years to build that campus, that is absolutely incredible. It looks so well thought out, and the opportunities for those students and their families is just beyond incredible. That staff, they just seem like they're just, you know, a thoroughbred waiting for that door to come down so they can start the race. They're excited about it, and they're over a half a year into school with all of the challenges. You got to be really proud of that.
I am, and that staff, you nailed it right. Now they're more to ask for forgiveness than permission. They are they're fun to watch. And they've really created some magic as far as, again, the dynamics, whether the child's on remote or they're in the class. I mean, it's just, they're fun to watch. But you know what? We've got that across the district. I can't say enough about our teachers. I am so proud of their effort under adverse conditions. And, you know, and I tell them, I said, if you got a vent or spew, you know, let me, you know, take it out on me. And they always apologize first, because again, I cannot say enough about our folks. They're incredible.
I was very impressed from the layout of the building, the programs and classes that are offered, incredible, you know, security measures in place. And every time one of them was talking about even the littlest thing, it was about the students, from, you know, the special needs areas to the cafeteria, the technology. Hats off, money well spent, and thanks to those that voted several years ago to fund that facility. So this is a great time for some Q&A. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. If anybody has any questions, Marla, you do the chat thing. No. All right. Well, I know you're
recommend the book to everyone.
Put it a little closer to the camera so we can see it.
It's called Keep Moving.
Ooh, I like it.
The author's Maggie Smith, and she's done a couple of pieces, and it's nothing that's profound, but it's just a really, as far as sometimes we need to be jogged about what we do and why we do. And I just want to end with something, because I shared this with teachers, and it was just a part of it. It says, all you have to do today is live the best you can. Even if your best doesn't feel like much right now, your best will get better and better. Trust that someday you will look back and realize you survived one day at a time. And that's the world we're in right now. And this, I recommend it, because sometimes it puts things in context, and, you know, you're still standing.
Yeah, never has there been a time when somebody asked you, what do you got going on this weekend? And when you said, you know, I really don't know, we really don't know. So,
really don't know.
I know a lot of eyes are on you watching what you're doing, and there's probably folks out there that are playing gotcha or nothing, but thank you for keeping your eye on the ball. Thank you too for the transparency and being so accessible. You are truly a chamber champion in more ways than I can count, and we're lucky to have you. And with that, unless anybody has anything else, we'll say good day. And Marla, you can turn off the recording so that nothing from here on can be held against us. How's that? I appreciate all of you. Have a great day, okay?
Call me if you need me.
I will. Thank you.